A very good day to you and welcome to the Game Changer feature. This program has been proudly brought to you by Conrad Adenauer Stiftung. Thank you to everyone who's joining us wherever you are in the world. And you know, when we're talking about our documentaries or our features, we're bringing in game changers that are constantly shifting our mindsets and making a difference in their different respective communities. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of having an in-depth conversation with Liz Mills, who is also known as Coach Liz. She's an Australian basketball coach who was head coach of the Kenya men's national basketball team in 2021. As of 2021, she has been the only woman in the world who is currently in charge of a men's senior national team, not only in basketball, but in any major sport. How incredible is that? And of course, she was in charge of the Kenya Morans since January 2021 and was the only female head coach currently serving in the men's game on the African continent and the world over. Today, we're going to be having an in-depth discussion on her passion, her big move to Africa, and her challenges with occupational segregation. Coach Liz Mills, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being our game changer, because you are definitely changing the game at Coach. Coach Mills, tell me about your passion when it comes to sport, but specifically basketball. Have you always been passionate about sports and coaching sports for that matter?
So I was lucky to be born and raised in Sydney, Australia. And in Australia, sport is like a religion.
Right.
We're very passionate about it as a country. Boys, girls, men and women, we all get behind our national teams or our club teams. And so my parents encouraged my twin sister and I to play numerous sports growing up, be that netball, tennis, we swam, we did athletics. And when we were 15, we started playing basketball. And I think I'd always been really competitive and loved being active. And so coaching seemed like a great way for me to stay in sport. Unfortunately, I was never going to be an elite athlete. And I thought, well, how do I work with elite teams? I coach. And my twin sister and I were identified as having strong leadership capabilities when we were about 14 and 15. Yeah. And so we started coaching netball. And then when we jumped over to basketball, it seemed like the logical thing to do. So we kept coaching, but basketball teams. And so I've always had this passion to want to be part of a team, help work with people, help people develop and move towards a team goal. And it's so satisfying to be able to achieve something with a group of people. I think sport does is a wonderful example of, people working together towards a goal and succeeding. So I decided after high school, I do a degree in sports science and sports management, and then I did my master's in coaching, and it was all geared towards being a professional coach. So from a very young age, I've always been passionate about sport, be that as a spectator, participant, or as a coach.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Coach Mills, for that. So you basically say that you started coaching at the age of 16 back home in Sydney. I mean, when other young people saw you coaching, what were their thoughts?
Look, I like to think that we inspired them to coach as well. Mm-hmm. I think it was also our age was an advantage, especially for young girls and women, or young women, in the way that they drop out at the ages of 14, 15, 16 in sport. But to see my twin sister and I coaching, engaging with younger girls, 9, 10, 11, that real crucial development age for girls to when they're becoming young women, and having a positive role model. And sport is such a great way for girls to feel included. They're healthy, they learn great life skills, and it's a real positive environment to be part of. And so I like to consider that we were positive role models for the next group of girls and even boys coming through playing basketball.
Oh, that's fantastic, Coach. And I think what's interesting is you obviously mentioned that, as young women grow, they tend to drop out of sports, and you played a key role in being able to motivate them. So talk to me about your big move to Africa. I mean, what was the initial plan? Were you just going to look at the opportunities, or where did you actually have an initial plan when you moved to Africa?
Well, my twin sister and I had actually volunteered in Zambia in 2008 and fell in love with the place and the people and your next door neighbors. And we kept coming back on holiday trips. And eventually we got a job in South Africa working for a volunteer organization. And they had a lot of sports volunteer programs. And I imagined I'd work in there and do some guest coaching with clubs or high school teams in South Africa. And then when I was in Zambia, a friend of mine invited me to their men's National League preseason tournament. And I went along thinking, oh, okay, I'll just watch and, see what the basketball is like. And then I was like, I could coach here. You know, these guys are good. And as a female coach, especially in Australia, we're taught that we can work with juniors, boys and girls, but specifically girls more likely, and women. The idea of coaching men had never occurred to me. And so I ended up approaching Heroes Play United, who kind of finished about midway through the pack in the preseason tournament. And I was so lucky. Their team manager was super open-minded, forward-thinking. And he's like, well, you've been coaching in Australia. You've got all these qualifications. I'll give you a training session and see how it goes. And I eventually went on to head coach that team, and we won the national title. And that really solidified my desire to stay in Africa and live and coach there for the last decade.
It's interesting. You were the assistant coach for Zambia's senior men's national team, as you said, from 2016 to 2017. What are some of the big lessons you learned that you took with you to the Morans?
I think first and foremost, as a coach, the biggest thing I learned working with the Zambian team is that I can want us to win. I can do all the work. I can feel like I can will us to do it, but you can't do it as a coach. The players have to buy into your system. And part of that learning curve was also understanding that when you're working with teams that have more local players rather than international players, is that you have to have a different style and a different way of teaching the international game. In Zambia, I very much kind of went, here's where we need to play, and tried to force it on them rather than really breaking it down and allowing for some adaptation for the Zambian style of game. And it even goes with, say, the Morans as well, where you're more dominated by those local players as well. How I would coach the Morans is not how I would coach a Tunisia, who are a little bit more advanced and have a different style of play. And so that opportunity to coach Zambia was very enlightening. I did some great things, and I made some really crucial mistakes that I've learned from and I value, because if I hadn't, I would never be the coach I am today. And I say this to a lot of coaches: be brave enough to fail, because it's when you fail, you learn so much. And I think a lot of coaches just want to copy and paste what everybody else is doing, but fundamentally try things, and maybe they'll succeed, maybe they won't, but you'll be better for it.
I think those are big lessons there, Coach. And it's interesting that in one of your interviews, you actually say that as much as I was concentrating on the game, the weight of being the first woman to do that in terms of coaching a national men's team in basketball weighed heavily on you. I think this is quite a loaded statement, Coach Liz. Can you unpack this for me?
Well, I very much felt like, so just to give you some context, this was the first game of Afrobasket, and we're playing Cote d'Ivoire, who ended up coming second in the tournament. So it was a huge game for us as Kenya. It was our first game back at Afrobasket for 28 years.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of different factors heading into this game, but fundamentally, I knew that I was breaking ground with this game. I was going to be the first woman to coach at a FIBA Continental Championship. And I was very aware of the scrutiny about female coaches working with men's teams. And I also wanted to go out there and represent women at the highest possible caliber that I could. People were going to analyze my behavior, our performance, how I carried myself. So I wanted to be at the top of my game, represent women to the best of my abilities, and above all, make them proud. And wanting them to see someone like me leading a men's team and going, if Liz can do it, I can do it. And hopefully I also change some mindsets of people who don't believe that women should be coaching men's teams.
And I think that's so good. I mean, you obviously say that you got overlooked a lot for coaching jobs because you're a woman, and of course looking at the age, which was also another big factor. And you actually say that it hurt you after you put a lot of effort in. Why do you think we still have such a deep-rooted patriarchy system within our sports industry, Coach?
Well, I think sport is a reflection of our society. Think about all the countries in the world. Where does gender equality exist? Or where are the top 20 countries in the world which has women leading their countries, or are prime ministers or presidents, etc.? And it's very few. And so I think sport reflects that. And in countries, it's a deep-seated cultural thing. It's historic. And in countries that are highly religious, we see that inequality even more prevalent. I think fundamentally, the only way we can change this is through education and understand that as our cultures need to continuously evolve to allow gender equality.
I love how you say that, you know, looking at the sports industry, it is also a reflection of what we go through on a daily basis, or our lived realities when we look at our society. And, you know, what's interesting, Coach, is when I was doing a little bit research around you, your decision to look more professional when coaching basketball game by wearing high-heeled leather boots, which I have to say you looked very good in them at all times. You always looked amazing. Instead of the sneakers, was actually seen as a provocation. It provoked a lot of people. And I remember in one of your interviews, you actually say that, you know, some of your female counterparts and your male counterparts actually say, don't do it. You know, just wear the sneakers like everyone does. And you had other people saying you're going to damage the court and all of that. I mean, why do you think it provoked so much?
I think fundamentally it's because they want me to look as less womanly as possible, because then they can forget that I'm a woman and that I'm coaching men's teams. They can kind of overlook it. And back when I was watching the National Basketball League here, we had amazing female head coaches, and they were very professional. They were wearing business suits, high heels, and I think I was really inspired by them.
Yeah.
While I want to be seen as an equal, I don't want people to forget that I'm a woman. And I think the boots are a nice touch to be like, yes, I'm here. I'm proud to be a woman, and take it or leave it. And I think you know, it's a personal choice for the coaches what they're comfortable in. Just for me, the game day is my business day, and that's my work environment, and I want to look as professional as possible. And I'm very comfortable in what I wear, and I can march up and down the sideline in boots just as well as sneakers.
Yeah, that definitely was a brilliant move. And you led Kenya obviously to a place at the African Championships for the first time since 1993. How did you feel as the coach? And I mean, what was that process like for you?
Look, I was so excited and so proud for Kenya.
Yeah.
They had been working, this group in particular had been working since 2019 to get Kenya back to Afrobasket. And for me to be able to be part of that in a small way to help them achieve their goal was just amazing. And obviously I come from Zone 6. I spent 7 years having to coach against Angola, who we beat to qualify. It was just amazing on that level. And I knew in the back of my mind that it was going to be an historical moment for women as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, if tears of joy, if I could have shed them, but I didn't. And I was just so proud of the players who had an amazing game. They had an amazing willpower. They didn't care who we were playing. Angola are 11-time Afrobasket champions, but we never had any doubt. We knew we were going to go in there and win that game. And to be able to help Kenya get back to Afrobasket and spark a new interest in basketball in Kenya is something very precious and memorable. And I'm just so glad that I was a small part of that.
That's fantastic, Coach. You were definitely not, it's not a small part. I would definitely believe that it changed a lot of women's mindsets towards, you know, what they can achieve, especially in the sports industry. We want to talk a little bit about, you know, contracts, and we were talking about occupational segregation. Is it true that, Coach, you've never been given a contract to coach and you have nearly emptied your own bank account to make this happen?
Very true. So in the last 10 years in Africa, I've always coached for love of the game and wanting to help develop the game across the continent.
Right.
I think also, truth be told, in order to get some of the opportunities that I have been given, part of that is sacrificing or putting my hand in my own pocket to make sure that I can get these opportunities. For example, being that when I was working with Cameroon, I had actually flown to Tunisia and approached several teams about working with them for the World Cup qualifiers in 2018.
Yeah.
And so in order to get those opportunities, if I had stayed at home, I would never be coaching a team like Cameroon.
Yeah.
And those are some of the sacrifices that I've had to make. And I understand that not everybody can do that, but I've been lucky in that I've always had corporate jobs. I've worked in learning and development units within big organizations.
Right.
I've worked in human resources. And so that's where I've been able to finance myself. And I know a lot of coaches all around the world, not even in Africa, who also do the same thing. But I also feel like there is that gender angle in that perhaps if I had been a male coach, I wouldn't have had to have made the same kind of sacrifices in order to get the opportunities that I've had.
Coach, what's interesting is, as you talked about not having contracts, you talked about this gender agenda angle that we want to discuss. And it's quite sad that women continue to grapple with long-standing inequalities, including, you know, a stubborn gender wage gap. We look at you know, these biases ingrained in workplace culture, discrimination, and occupational segregation. Let's talk about economic securities for all working women through your experience. Why do you think it's important that, as you said before, if it was probably a male, they would have been given a contract and, you know, they wouldn't have to strain themselves so much?
Due to my own experience, what I would suggest that the next group of female coaches coming through is they set a certain standard of how they want to be treated. Yeah. And that is wanting a contract, that is wanting a salary, or be that getting their expenses paid for.
Yeah.
I think by setting a standard early, they won't be abused as much as, say, I have. Although it was a trade-off in my situation, I was able to get opportunities that women historically have never had. And I'm so glad that I was able to break those barriers for the next group of women coming through. But I cannot stress how much I want them to set the standard early in their careers. Because the minute that you start saying, oh, I'll do it for free, or I don't need a contract, then people in power are going to abuse that. And so what I hope is that my profile allows clubs, team presidents, federation presidents, whoever who are hiring these women to understand that they also bring value, they bring diversity, they bring a different style. And because of that, they do deserve to be paid like the male coaches. They do deserve a contract. And so hopefully they can learn from some of my mistakes and, you know, have coaching or whatever they are in sport be that their main livelihood.
Coach, but let me ask you this. I mean, I know that you're on a sabbatical in Australia right now, you know, but I mean, are you going to continue allowing, you know, the different you know, the different national teams that you're going to join to treat you that way? I mean, are you not basically learning from your mistakes? Are you going to start demanding for a contract? What's the game plan there?
Look, even with the Morans, there was a lot of blurred understanding that were left by the wayside, unfortunately.
Right.
And I think federations, not just be that Kenya, I know situation with even a lot of male coaches, you know, you get promises, but they're never delivered. And that's why contracts are crucial, because we can then go to FIBA. But I'm really happy to say that I'm going to be heading back to Africa on Thursday to work with a club team in the Basketball Africa League. And part of that is a contract and a salary. So exactly. So moving forward, it's all about being able to say to women, look, I did the hard yards, but now I have a standard and there's no way that I would now do jobs for free or as a volunteer. And hopefully that inspires them also to have the courage to demand the same thing.
Definitely. You being an inspiration coach, you struck a blow for equality, proving that women can lead a men's team in the toughest tournament on the African continent, and being the first woman in the world in charge of a men's senior national team, not only in basketball, as we said before, but in any major sport, is a great achievement. Do you have any regrets whatsoever?
No regrets. I think, you know, the path to get to this point in my career, I've learned so many valuable lessons that I wouldn't change anything. And I'm just very proud to be able to have broken the glass ceiling and really hope that I can inspire and encourage the next group of female coaches to come barreling through the door too. And we have more female coaches with men working for men's club teams or national teams in the future.
Fantastic. And are you going to continue wearing your black high-heeled boots?
Yes, keep a lookout for them in the Basketball Africa League. They're my go-to. I might change it up a little bit and wear high heels. I'll have to, you know, do a social media vote to see if that's allowed, because I think there might be some uproar if I wasn't wearing the boots.
Yeah, that is true. I actually read on one part that when you didn't wear them, a lot of people were concerned and they say, no, you need to go back and wear them. So, you know, it's a big thing. And, you know, Coach, as we round this off, you could have easily said no to such big roles. What kept you going in the toughest moments? I do know that you had a little bit of a Zambian experience whereby you almost like packed your bags and almost left. You know, what kept you going? What kept you grounded in the toughest times?
Well, I'd been coaching in Zambia from 2011 to 2017. And I had, since 2012, I was always like, I want to be the first woman to coach at AfroBasket. And so when Zambia was competing in the Zone 6 qualifiers for AfroBasket, I was like, this is going to be my opportunity. We're going to qualify. And then we failed to achieve our goal. And that was crushing. And that's when I said to myself, do I want to keep coaching? Do I have what it takes? And so I went back to Australia, and I'm so lucky that I have a great group of friends and family, my parents and my twin sister. And my close group of friends said, Liz, this is what you're passionate about. And don't let this failure be the thing that takes you away from coaching.
Yeah.
And that inspired me to have a look specifically at what had happened at that tournament and look in the mirror and say, where did I go right? Where did I go wrong? And holding myself accountable. And that's when I upskilled. I got better in certain aspects of coaching. I looked into basketball analytics and film. And I said, by getting better, I add more value to my teams. I've now got this valuable experience of going through qualifiers. And without failing with Zambia, I suspect I would have always just stayed in Zone 6. And that pushed me to go out and start working with the likes of Cameroon, who have NBA players, EuroLeague players, and then coaching in Rwanda and then Kenya, and now back to Africa with another team. And so I think it was exactly what I needed. It was a reality check, and those tough moments tell you who you are. And I'm really lucky to have had a great support circle who continue to push me, because I was so aware in 2021 at AfroBasket that, you know, if I wasn't going to do it, who was the next female coming through the rank?
Yeah.
And I want women to look at my career, learn from the mistakes I've made so they don't make the same ones, be inspired by some of the successes I've had. And hopefully, you know, it won't be too long till we have the second, third, fourth, fifth female head coach working with a national team. And I want to get to the point where we don't even talk about it anymore. It's just normal. And so that vision or that goal is what has kept me going in those tough moments.
That's fantastic, Coach. I think one big key takeaway from your last conversation is have a strong support system. And I think a lot of young women, as much as they want to, you know, excel in their different fields, might have challenges with the support system because they're constantly being told, you're a woman, you can't do that. Why do you think you can have the audacity or capacity to even, you know, get into a man's world or a man's space, which is quite sad. So that's definitely one big one. And of course, for women to constantly follow their passion. Thank you so much, Coach Mills, for joining me for the Game Changer feature as you're changing the game in Africa and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Liz Mills, also known as Coach Mills, who is an Australian basketball coach, who was head of coach of the Kenya's men national basketball team in 2021. And as of 2021, she has been the only woman in the world currently in charge of a men's senior national team, not only in basketball, but in any major sport. She is changing the game and she is shifting mindsets. Thank you again, Coach, for coming through, and thank you to everyone who joined us all over the world. We'll see you next time.